everybody, it's Sandy Laws, and I'm excited today to be joined by Shimon Zimmer, my friend and colleague and a professional tour guide from Israel, and also my co host and producer, Jeremiah DeLessio. Very happy to have the group back together, and today is going to be an interesting discussion or review because we're going to talk about the places where things happen, the events happened around the passion of Jesus. And while we read about the story in the Gospels, one thing we really don't get a good, keen sense of is where it happened, like logistically, where things happened, and the lay of the land, and the city called Jerusalem in the first century AD. So I'm thrilled that Shimon has agreed to join us so that we can all be more connected to the places and spaces where Jesus' passion took place. And Shimon, I know that you want to begin at the beginning. So if you don't mind taking us on this journey of the Passion places and starting with the Mount of Olives, correct?
Yes, yes. Hi, hello everybody. So good to have you back. Uh, you know, uh, every time I'm going to talk about Yeshua, and I'm using the name Yeshua in Jerusalem, it's I'm really excited because I'm trying really to pass the feeling, the emotionals to people that are sitting abroad, going to churches, talking about Yeshua. But hello, I'm here in the places that he went, he walked, he felt, he cried, he prayed, he made his speeches, and everything is here. I just have to reach my hands and I will be there. And today, really, I want to talk about the area of Mount of Olives and places in Mount of Olives which they have huge impact on Yeshua's last week in Jerusalem. We have to understand that the last week of Jerusalem, well, it's a small part in the Gospels, but it's huge when it comes to Yeshua himself and his believers, and what he did in Jerusalem. I want to share something with you. Every time we are in the northern part of Israel, Sea of Galilee, Golan Heights, Caesarea Philippi, and almost 50% of the Bible was written over there. And these are the places which Yeshua made things for others. All the miracles, all the help, what he did was for others. But now Yeshua is coming to Jerusalem, and now it's Yeshua. We going into Yeshua, into his feelings, into his emotionals. It's totally different from what we had in the north. Now Jerusalem, it's a all new chapter. Jerusalem, the last week of Yeshua. And of course, we're coming generally to a vast area named Mount of Olives. Everything goes on the top of Mount of Olives, the slopes of Mount of Olives, the valley at the foot of Mount of Olives, and the Temple Mount, which is just across the valley.
Well, I've been there with you, Shimon. I've been so fortunate to have you as the guide for the tours I take over there three times. And actually, we first met in, I think, 2009 for my first tour
Yeah, I
of
think eight.
Israel,
Yeah,
and the 2009, 8. And
yeah.
the Mount of Olives is a spectacular place because it really is descriptive of what that slope side is. And take a minute and just paint a picture of what the Mount of Olives would have looked like in the first century.
Okay, so first of all, I want to go to Mount of Olives. Sorry, not only the first century. I want to go to even the 10th century before Christ, because Mount of Olives is actually a mountain range which goes from north to south, and basically Mount of Olives is a kind of a border between Jerusalem from the west side and the Judea desert from the east side. Mount of Olives is a mountain range, as I said, which has three main gaps, three main topics. We are talking about Mount of Olives, we are talking about Mount Scopus, and we are talking about a mountain name in Hebrew. We call it Mashchit and Mishcha. In English, you might call it Mount Corruption. Mount Corruption. That mountain it refers to King Solomon. In Hebrew, we call it Mishcha and Mashchit. Sounds similar, but
Yeah.
totally different. Mishcha in Hebrew means anointed. Mashchit means corrupted. Sounds in
Wow.
Hebrew mishcha and manshchit, but in English it's anointed and corrupted, and that's King Solomon, which he was anointed on this mount, but also he built hundreds of altars for his foreign wives, and this is why he was corrupted. Um, it's interesting because I'm going just to read a small verse. That's from the second book of Kings. Josiah was a very good king, did everything good for God. And Josiah was so angry about all these stages that were built for the foreign women, which is so against the Jewish tradition. And the second book of Kings, he said, and the king defiled the high places that were east of Jerusalem to the south of Mount of Corruption, which Solomon, the king of Israel, had built for Ashtoreth and abomination. And it continues. So, Mount Corruption, that's one of the three places that actually building Mount of Olives. So, Mount of Olives is interesting because, as I said, it's almost 3,000 years in our books. For an example, it doesn't mention at all in the Quran. You don't see anything in the Quran the name Mount of Olives, not in Arabic, not in other languages. Um, so that's actually that the first temple period, the time of King Solomon, the time of Josiah. So we can see it. Also, the name Mount of Olives, we have it when David actually escaped from Absalom. Also, the name Mount of Olives mentioned. But it's interesting that the last part of the book of Zechariah, talking about the end of the days that will be taken on Mount of Olives. And I must share it with you because it's interesting how it's written. The book of Zechariah, the end of the days. And it says, on that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, God's feet. We are talking about God's feet. On that day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two forms east from to west to a very wide valley, and it goes. This is the end of the day. Mount of Olives going to be spreaded, actually split. God will stand on both sides. That's the end of the days. This is actually almost the end of the book of Zechariah. And you know what? It doesn't written in the book, but according to Jewish tradition, when Noah, the great flood, when the
Yeah.
bird brought the olive branch, according to Jewish tradition, that was brought from Mount of Olives as well.
Mm,
Yeah, so you can see it's a closure.
right.
Everything is there, the beginning and the end and the end of the days, and we can see it all over. And this is why the place Mount of Olives contains so many, and we are not yet succeeded to begin with Yeshua on Mount of Olives.
I had no idea it had this long biblical history.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about it. And when you look at the ridge, it looks like one continual ridge. So there must be some separation between these three spaces that you're talking about. But
Yes.
it did, in fact, always have olive trees on it. Is that correct?
Oh,
Like
yeah,
as, yeah,
absolutely.
always.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, olive trees and grapes. We
grapes.
found many wine, um, to produce a wine, to step on the grapes, wine
Yeah,
press. We found,
like a press.
yes, Gat Semene. Gat Semene. At the foot of Mount of Olives, Gat is actually grapes in Hebrew. Gat is the place which you're producing the wine. Gat Semene. Semene is shemen, oil, olive oil. And Gat, we are talking about the grapes. So we have grapes and olives on this mountain, but the name is Mount of Olives. Uh, sorry. Talking about the bridge, one of the stories of Mount of Olives is, and it comes now to the time of Yeshua, the temple. We're talking about the red heifer. Red heifer is a special red cows which the Jews used to take the ashes from this red heifer, mixed it all kind of ingredients, and that's how they used to worship God. And maybe it was a bridge between the Temple Mount and Mount of Olives, and these cows were sacrificed on Mount of Olives, and only the ashes of the red heifer were taken to the temple.
Again, that's surprising because we always hear that all of the sacrifices were done in the temple courtyards. So it clearly must
Yes,
have some special significance, as you're saying, like to be separated.
yeah. In the courtyard, it was the main altar. Okay, but when they
Mhm.
brought the ashes, that was brought from Mount of Olives, and
Hmm.
we believe that it was a kind of a bridge between them.
Okay. So take us to the time of Jesus whenever you're ready and walk through what the place was like and where Jesus was there and what happened there.
Well, when we are talking about Yeshua on Mount of Olives, so of course the first place that comes to us is Bethany. Bethany. Bethany.
And what does that mean, Bethany?
I,
Like
I'm
it's
going to
what?
talk about it. I'm going to
Okay.
talk. Bethany and a place named Beit Faji. It's two small villages which on top of Mount of Olives, just a few hundred yards from Jerusalem. And every Jewish name has a meaning. Bethany in Hebrew we call it Beit Ania. Beit Ania. It refers to the house of the poor people, not poor as they don't have any money. We are talking more about humble people. Okay, it's not so poor people by money, but they are very humble. So Yeshua is coming to Bethany, and it's very interesting because in Bethany we can talk about three main things, very important, happened in Bethany, and soon I will wide it. But the first is when Yeshua is coming and he's healing Lazarus in the place. The second thing we can talk about Bethany is the dinner at Simon the leper, and the third thing in Bethany, and maybe, well, for me it's the first place because this is again a closure. Yeshua went up to heaven from Bethany. 40 days after the resurrection, 40 days after the resurrection, Yeshua is taking his people to Bethany, saying goodbye, and from there he went up. I want to share it with you, and it's important because I'm not sure people knowing all the time that Yeshua left us in Bethany, and that's from the book of Luke. And it says, then he led them out as far as Bethany, and lifting up his hands, he blessed them. While he blessed them, he parted from them and was carried up into heaven. And his people went back to Jerusalem full of joy. This is how the book of Luke is telling us. Uh, I'm not sure people know this event. This small village town on top of Mount of Olives, Yeshua left us after 40 days and went up to heaven. But let's start with the first thing that actually happened there. He's coming there and he's meeting three, like two sisters and a brother, Martha and Miriam and Lazarus. You know, as a Jew, I'm always trying to find in Yeshua what I'm calling Judaism.
Mhm.
It makes me feel very good when I'm finding in Yeshua. And I must share it with you. I'm sure Sandy remember. I shared it with them. I taught Christianity many years ago. I taught Christianity in a college,
Mhm.
and the first thing I put above the blackboard, back then it was blackboard, not today the sophisticated students, blackboard with a chalk, and I put a ribbon on top. And I took this ribbon from the book of Matthew right after the Sermon on the Mountain, when Yeshua said, I didn't come to destroy it, I came to fulfill it. The Torah. Yeshua didn't come to destroy the Torah, he came to fulfill it. He's a good rabbi. And when I'm finding Jewish things in Yeshua, it makes me feel very, very good. So Yeshua is coming to Bethany, and um, is coming to visit these three people, and Martha telling him, "You have to heal my brother. He's dead." That was after 2 days. Yeshua waited 4 days. He didn't go immediately to save him. He waited another 2 extra days because he knew that the miracle will be stronger and more influenced after 4 days. 2 days, still fresh. 4 days, you have a sign. And you know what is the sign? It's amazing. In the book of John, it said that Yeshua entered and he removed the shrouds. It's very Jewish. We, the Jews, are not burying people in boxes. We doing it only the body after it was purified and with shrouds. And Yeshua entered, and the body was very, very small. Means it was not in a box, it was in shrouds. And he was healed. And he was healed. And that's a great miracle. It's not after 2 days. Yeshua waited specifically 4 days. So he was healed. The second thing that we are talking about there is the dinner. And you know what? I try to understand why Yeshua came first place to Bethany. Why didn't he didn't go straight to Jerusalem? He could have gone
Great
to
question.
Jerusalem, to the
Yeah,
temple, the biggest
right.
community. Guys, we talking about the second temple period. Jerusalem is huge. We are talking, by the way, that time we're talking generally around the world. We're talking about 60 million Romans and around 5 to 8 million Jews around the world. Jerusalem is a huge metropolitan of Jews. We are talking about a very big place. And he could have gone straight to Jerusalem. he decided.
Shimon, what was the population of Jerusalem then, would you guess?
So, so including the Romans, we're talking about almost 2 million people. How many Jews were there? we are not sure, but I'm talking about not Jerusalem as Jerusalem. It's Jerusalem and all the suburbs around. It's a very
Right.
big area, and it's interesting because Yeshua is coming to visit Simon the leper. The Bible says, the book of John says that Yeshua came 6 days before Passover. Means that Yeshua came on Friday, because if he would have left Jericho on Saturday, that a big discrimination of the Shabbat. Yeshua left Friday and came just before Shabbat entered. Very Jewish, very Jewish. And the Bible specifically, the book of John, John 12, specifically, the first verse said about how Yeshua left 6 days before the Passover. God forbidden, do not discriminate the Shabbat. And he did it. And Yeshua is coming to the house of Simon, this leper, and something very interesting happening there. Uh, Mary, she is bringing a very, very expensive perfume. We call it a spikenard. Spikenard. The Bible even mentioned that it cost 300 shekels. It's huge money. And she's taking this perfume and she's pouring it on Yeshua's feet. And how she cleans it? With her hair, the long
Oh,
hair. She's leaning with the hair and she's cleaning Yeshua's feet. And one of the people participating in this meal is, of course, Judah, the man of Koreas. And he is very, very corrupted. And he says, it's amazing. Again, the book of John 12, he said, hello, what are you doing? Why are you spending so much money on that? Let's give it to the right people. When Judah said the right people, he's talking about his pocket, of course. And
yes.
Yeshua says something very, very interesting. Yeshua, he says, why you are picking at her? Leave her. She's a righteous. He says, Yeshua, in the book of Matthew, he said, in the future, people will remember this woman and what he did for this world. This is why, by the way, Catholics are taking this Mary as Mary Magdalene.
Ah,
Uh, Maybe that's, as it says in the book of Matthew, it refers to that, as Yeshua already said, remember in the future. Everybody will remember what she did and everybody will remember her. Maybe. So
yeah, maybe.
again, three. No, no. I'm just, I'm sharing. I'm, I'm, I'm not forcing you to
I'm
believe in
just
that.
saying it. I feel like it's far more likely it's Lazarus' sister, right?
Yes, yes,
Why would it Mary Magdalene be actually
yeah.
in the account?
You
So
know,
I'm
you,
gonna say
I will tell you something. I'll tell you something. Many times when Christians coming to Israel, I'm asking them a question. I'm asking, guys, in the Bible it says that Joshua crossed the Jordan River.
right.
The name Jordan was given maybe 70 or 80 years after Joshua penetrated to the land. He made the lottery for the tribes. And when the tribe of Dan settled in the north, this river started there, the Dan, and the Jordan came from there. How it can be that Joshua crossed the Jordan River while the name is not existing? And the answer is very simple. We say in Hebrew, Batanach, Ein Mukdam ve'ein Meuchar. In the Bible, there is no early and there is no late. It's not that CNN reporters crossed the Jordan River and said, and oh, now we are crossing the. No. The Bible was written dozens of years later, sometimes hundreds of years later. Now we know the name Jordan, so it mentioned. The same with Yeshua. Maybe the event of Mary Magdalene was written in different time. Catholics adopted Mary, Lazarus' sister, as Mary Magdalene. Maybe in
Okay.
different times she was there or not. I'm just sharing, okay? I just want you to know things. That's all. So, that's what
So
I'm
Shimon,
trying.
one quick question. So is this Simon the leper's house, or is this
Yes.
Lazarus's and his two sisters' house?
No, Simon the leper house. Yeah. And by the way, maybe this is Simon. The name is Simon the leper, but the people thinking that actually Yeshua healed him before, but the name
Okay.
remained Simon the leper. So Yeshua, after a few days in this house, he decided to go to Jerusalem. On the way, from the top of the mountain, which we're talking about, Bethany, now he's crossing to another small village named Beit Fagi or Beit Fagi. In Hebrew, it's the house of the fig, the house of the fig, Beit Fagi, fig. And Yeshua is coming to this place, and it's a beautiful parable which happened in this place. This is the parable of the fig, and it's a huge question what Yeshua wanted to show in this parable. And you know what? I'm whispering. He wanted to show that he's a good Jew in this parable. So interesting. And what is this parable? I want to just to read it, and you'll understand. I'm talking about the book of Luke. In the book of Luke 13, it says, and he told this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it and found none. And he said to the vine dresser, he said, "Look, for 3 years now I have come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and I found none. Cut it down. Why should it use up the ground?" And he answered him, "Sir, let it alone this year also, until it's around 4 years." Something very, very Jewish. All we have to do, guys, is to go to the book of Leviticus. And in the book of Leviticus, something written about the fruit. When you come into the land and plant any kind of tree for food, then you shall regret it fruit as forbidden. 3 years, 3 years, as Yeshua said, 3 years it shall be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. Only the fourth year and the fifth year, this food can be eaten. Why Yeshua showing this parable, and why he makes these parallel stories between the book of Leviticus and the book of Luke? We think we think that Yeshua showing that the tree is God and the fig are the people of Israel. If you wait patiently and if you follow God, not 1 week, follow Him constantly, a few years, be devoted to Him, then you'll survive. If it will be less than 3 years, you'll be a manure. This is how it says, a manure. That's what will happen. Exactly. Yeah. So that's a beautiful parable that Yeshua made. And when he came to Jerusalem and he wanted to point to the supper room, he asked his people, "Go to this village, Beit Fagi, and take the colt, the young donkey, take it from this place. And this colt came from this village. So you see, we're just talking all the way now only about Mount of Olives. It's
Right.
so vast, stories and ideas and the parable, and Yeshua is doing a great stuff there. And you know, just to summarize it, he's coming to Bethany. He's healing the dead person. He's having dinner. Miriam is next to him, and then after 40 days, he comes with his followers, and he lifting his hand up, leaving them, and going up to heaven. That's how the book says.
What do you think is the symbolism of Bethany for Jesus? I mean, you say it's the place of the poor or the humble. Is
Yes,
there a message attached there with why Jesus chose that place to ascend to heaven?
yeah. So we don't know why. You know, many times when people are coming to Israel and we're standing on Mount of Olives, I'm pointing. And by the way, when you're standing on Mount of Olives and facing west, so I'm telling my people, guys, you can go to each and every church you want. You can go to hear any pastor you want. Welcome, welcome home. You're standing here. Look at me, I'm saying. Have a look. That's on top, Mount Zion, the Last Supper. Yeshua is having the Last Supper. He's standing up, leaving his people, walking down all the way to the Kidron Valley, coming to the Garden of Gethsemane, locating at the foot of this mountain. Finding his disciples on the stone, begging them to not fall asleep, and they fell asleep once and twice. The high priest came, defined Yeshua, and took him along the Kidron Valley. I'm pointing with my finger to the house, and we shall talk about it the next talking, to the house of the high priest, Caiaphas. And he's standing there. I'll talk about it. Uh, and the next morning is being taken. And again, I'm pointing with my finger. Again, from the Kidron Valley, guys. You see the Kidron Valley at the foot of us? Into the city and coming inside to the place of the trial. And from there, he was taken, according to some people, to the garden tomb, according to some people, the Holy Sepulchre. And people asking all the time, what do you think? What is the real place? And now I'm answering to your question. I don't care. From here, I see everything. If it was there or there or there, it doesn't matter. Yeshua is all over. Many questions you cannot answer. Why Yeshua came first to Bethany? Maybe because he knew Simon. Maybe because he had earlier knowledge about the family, the two sisters and the brother. But the fact is, in Bethany, all this event happened, and this is the pace he picked up to go up to heaven after 40 days.
I like to think about it as his friends were there, right? Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And so he had a real kinship with them, and he would stay there before he would go into Jerusalem. So maybe it's a smaller village where he felt comfortable and he could be himself and have community with this group of people that he really loved.
Yes,
So why
yes.
not start there? You're starting this really hard
Okay,
journey, and
okay.
you want
Oh,
to be with people who love you
okay.
before you begin.
Yeshua came from Jericho. Jericho is about 700 feet below sea level, and he's coming to Jerusalem, which is about 2,400 feet above sea level. It's about, I would have said, about 15 miles up the hill. Yeshua is walking all the way from there to Bethany. Why? We really don't know. I try to find an answer. Um, Look, according to the Bible, people in Jerusalem were very interested about Yeshua. If he's coming to the temple, when he will come to the temple, where is he now? They heard about everything happening in the north, all the miracles, all the group of people that following now Yeshua. And the people in Jerusalem asked, maybe Yeshua wanted to come to Bethany to prepare, not to come as a big hammer into the city. Hello, I'm still here. I'm watching you. Soon I will come. Maybe. We're not sure about it, but we're
Mhm.
just thinking about it.
I like that thought too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after he gets the cult in Bethpage, that's how we pronounce it poorly.
How you pronounce it?
Bethpage, just like it sounds. I
Such
know.
that's a strange
So
language.
so wrong. It's so bad, but I don't know Hebrew. I've tried to learn it. It's very hard.
Welcome aboard. You always invited.
Okay, take us. Continue on the journey.
So Yeshua is coming to Mount of Olives, but of course before he is bringing the colt, he's standing on Mount of Olives, looking to the temple, prophesied about the temple. Not even one stone above stone will remain in this place. And Yeshua is coming, and as I said before, now we're dealing with Yeshua from the inside. It's not Yeshua for others, it's Yeshua himself inside. What he's going to feel inside. He's going to be chased, he's going to be stoned, he's going to be cursed by the people. The Romans are after him, the high priests are after him, people that doesn't believe in his faith are after him, and he actually has to escape from one side, but from the other side he wants to spread his new vision. And it's fascinating to understand how Yeshua stands looking, saying, as I said, not even one stone above stone will remain. And it happened. And it happened. 70 years after that, the temple was totally destroyed, demolished. And uh, of course, it was after the crucifixion, but it was his kind of to prophesize, and he succeeded in that. So that was on Mount of Olives. This is why Mount of Olives, which is, I would have said, it's about 1.5 miles long from Mount Scopus, Mount Corruption, Mount of Olives, and we have approximately 25, 26 churches and remains of churches on this mountain. So it's so important. And again,
Yes.
when you're standing on Mount of Olives and you're looking to Jerusalem, you don't need anything in your life because everything is on a tray. The beginning and the end. Everything is there. Mount of Olives, people say, Mount of Olives. No. Ooh. So many things about Mount of Olives and all the stories around. I love the
It's.
place.
I like the story of where he stops. This may be the same place. The church there is Dominus Flevit, right?
Yes.
And the
Well, it's a
teardrop
tradition.
shaped
Yes.
church.
Yes.
Yeah, tradition. That he stopped there and he cried over the fate of Jerusalem, as you're talking about, what will happen. He also is really speaking to the fact that everything that people wanted, peace and happiness and a relationship with God, could be found with him, but the people didn't want that. They chose not to have that experience. And so he's crying over their fate, also about the fact that they didn't see who he was, didn't understand or wouldn't believe who he
No,
was.
they saw,
So,
but they didn't believe. They saw it. They saw the
yeah,
miracles. They saw what he can
yeah,
do. They heard him. They didn't believe. Don't forget, these people were led by the most corrupted priests, Jewish priests, the most corrupted one. These people were pointed, their position was pointed according to their relationship with the Romans. not according to their, like abilities and their what they can do. And they were so afraid about Yeshua, so afraid about him. And yes, Dominus flevit means the master is crying. The master is crying. This is one of 22 churches were built in Israel by Berluzzi,
Uh-huh.
a very famous Italian architect.
Hmm.
Well, it really is stunning. And
Yeah.
as you're walking there and you can see that church and you hear the message, you can't help but feel the intensity of Jesus's emotions around it. And I think we're called to understand and feel that emotion too, so we really could truly understand what he did for us. And that's why that is such an important place as
Yes.
well.
Yes. Generally, again, we are talking about the last week of Yeshua. You know, it's very difficult to point to the real time when exactly he was born. Either it was 0, maybe 4, or 6 before. Maybe he was crucified the age of 33, maybe the age of 37. No one can really know. Each one has his own opinion. And even we have a gap of a few years which we don't know what happened with him. And this is why the last week of Yeshua is crucial to understand Yeshua. And this
Yes.
last week, this is exactly what we are talking about. And this is why I preferred from the beginning to talk about Mount of Olives, a little bit to touch Temple Mount, but mostly Mount of Olives now, and the next time to talk about the house of Caiaphas, Kidron Valley, Temple Mount, Holy Sepulchre, and all this stuff as a second part. Like to give
Okay.
Mount of Olives his own honor because he
Yeah.
deserves it. He deserves it. You
Hmm.
see all everything around the Mount of Olives.
Well, I think that you're walking us through that story brings so much more meaning and also insight to how significant that place was for him. I love the idea, which I hadn't really thought about before, that this is where he also ascended into heaven. And this messaging around its name as the place of the humble, because he is so humble and he comes from a humble place. He comes from Bethany, a place that's humble, to sacrifice himself as the Lamb of God. So I really like that analogy. I like that, how it all fits together. Beautiful story.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Hey guys, come to Israel. Come on.
Yeah. Shimon, thank you so much for walking us through the whole area around the Mount of Olives. I have to say, you are undoubtedly the best tour guide in Israel. And I know I'm anxious to get back and looking forward to traveling there in 2025. That's our hope, correct? And I
Yes.
hope that people will reach out to you as a tour guide. You can find your email is Shimon Zimmer, ShimonZemer at gmail.com. So, anybody interested in a tour guide privately or for a group, I would really like them to reach out to you, because I'm saying everybody knows you're the best tour guide in Israel. We all know it, it's a fact. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. And as we say every Friday, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
Shalom. And we look forward to our next discussion with you about the path of the passion for Jesus. Thank you for your wonderful insight, my friend. We'll talk
Looking
soon.
forward. Looking
Thank
forward.
you,
Okay.
Shimon.
All
Appreciate
Thank
right.
your
you.
Take
time.
care.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Okay.